Perhaps the most important news item of our times, which is hardly ever mentioned by the media or by politicians, is that we need a certain ecological footprint in order to be sustainable. And according to the Ecological Footprint Network, this is somewhere between 1.6, which was reported a few years ago, and now 1.7. And this is achieved only by very poor countries. And so what that tells you is that it's not so much about the political system you have in place, but more about how poor are you willing to be? How much of this production and consumption system are you willing to get rid of? Now, it's true that some of the green technology can do a little bit, like in the Scandinavian countries, you find from, say, 7.25 in the case of Sweden, that is GHA or global hectares per capita, many times more than the sustainable amount, to about 5 GHA in the case of Norway, which devotes more to green technology, but 5 is still several times more than what is sustainable. And sustainable, by the way, does not mean that you allow wildlife to thrive enormously. It just means that you utilize all the resources you can from the planet, and without destroying it to the point that you can't keep reaping those resources. That's what it really means. So a certain amount of destruction is going on and suppression of other species, obviously, even at this number, but it is not so horribly exploitative that would cause immediate destruction like our current level, which, like they say, would require many planets in order to sustain the current levels of consumption and the footprint generated. And this, of course, has to be understood in the context of population, since when you have more population, then the per capita footprint that would be needed to comply with this sustainable goal would be actually less. The more people, the smaller the footprint needs to be. And so, what that tells you is that unless our politicians and our consciousness and our media and everything tell us, look, you guys need to give up this system of massive production and consumption and become poor, until that truth is handed over to us, we're not even going to have the possibility of realizing that this is the only way to get out of this horrendous ecocidal path that we're in. And yes, of course, population reduction is also a strong way to tackle the problem. Increasing contraception efforts and discouraging people from having babies and so on. All that stuff is very important as well. But it is, of course, the system itself that fosters the great natalism or the great population growth that we've seen, especially ever since the Industrial Revolution. We see a hockey stick population growth, obviously because of the advances in food production and medicine and plumbing and all those things, all those technologies. But as far as the actual economics and the whole idea of prosperity and getting rich or the American dream and all those things have to go, because unless we all become relatively poor by our standards, we simply cannot be sustainable. 1.7 GHA is the minimal amount that we need to reach. And America at this point is at 8.22. And even a country like Norway, the least ecologically destructive of the Scandinavian countries, is at 5. So only a very poor country like Eritrea is at a level currently 0.5, which actually would be quite acceptable.